the relationship between the Paris branch of the Knights Templar and the Pope had completely broken down. Soon, Landry received his excommunication notice, followed by an arrest warrant personally signed by the Grand Master of the Templars, de Molay. Initially, Landry planned to meet with Grand Master de Molay to expose the Pope's misdeeds. However, the Pope acted first. Despite this, Landry stuck to his original plan, firmly believing that the Grand Master would side with him. As Landry stepped out, he saw a group of people at the door who had decided to stay at the Paris branch and no longer follow him. Landry respected their choice. Tancred then asked him if he would still go to Chartres to find the Grand Master if it were just the two of them. Landry firmly stated that he would. When they opened the door, they saw a crowd of Templars outside, all supporters of Landry. Making such a choice was extremely risky for the Templars.
By the grace of God! By the grace of God!
On the other hand, Joan, who killed the Queen of Catalonia, now inherited 2 countries and became the new queen. She felt that the days of hiding things should end, so she decided to stay in Navarre and rule the country. Joan hoped that Landry would join her. However, plans often go awry when put into action. Queen Joan couldn't bear to leave her daughter Isabella behind, so she decided to risk returning to Paris to take her away. Upon arriving at the palace, she ordered her maid to summon Isabella. When Isabella arrived, she expressed her unwillingness to leave France. Although Navarre is Queen Joan's territory, it has nothing to do with Isabella. As a princess, Isabella has no reason to leave, so the conversation between the two was not pleasant. Landry led his contingent of Templars to the Templar headquarters in Chartres. The Templars there were fully armed and lined up, awaiting their arrival. De Molay received Landry, and after a brief exchange of pleasantries, Landry recounted the Pope's crimes to the Grand Master. He revealed that the Pope had sent assassins to kill the Templar leader Godfrey, stolen the Holy Grail, and planned to conquer all of Europe. To Landry's surprise, the Grand Master refuted his claims, suggesting that the Pope's actions might benefit the Templars. De Molay believed that with the Pope dealing with Europe's troubles, the Templars could reclaim the Holy Land, achieving a mutually beneficial outcome. Landry hesitated, unsure if he truly wanted to return to Jerusalem. The Grand Master then asked Landry if he would withdraw his accusations against the Pope. Landry not only refused but also urged the Grand Master to rally all Templars to challenge the Pope and reclaim the Holy Grail. However, the Grand Master saw no reason to oppose the Pope, especially since the Pope had already arrived in Chartres. Landry now faced imminent judgment. Queen Joan wrote a letter and planned to have her maid deliver it to Landry at the Knight's sanctuary. She planned to leave France at dusk. Just then, King Philip entered the room, and in her haste, Joan hid the letter under a book. King Philip had come to invite her to dinner. He picked up a Navarrese coin from the desk, complimented it, and continued to look around. As his hand rested on the book, Joan quickly accepted the dinner invitation. However, she noticed something amiss. King Philip had always disliked Navarrese coins but now praised them. The maid reassured Joan, reminding her that the king would not have invited her to dinner if he knew she was carrying another man's child. Unbeknownst to them, Isabella overheard their conversation and was shocked by the revelation. Landry was imprisoned, awaiting trial. Tancred wanted to help him escape, but Landry refused. He believed that since the Pope was present, the Holy Grail must be there as well. He thought that since the Pope was here, the Holy Grail must be here too. Landry asked Tancred to take back the Holy Grail while the defense was empty during the trial. Faced with Landry's firm request, Tancred had no choice but to agree. At the trial, the Templars listed 5 charges against Landry, including assaulting a fellow Templar, conspiring with Saracens, making false accusations against the Pope, and violating his oath to the Templars, who were sworn to obey the Pope. When it was Landry's turn to defend himself, he did not deny the charges. He claimed that all his actions were in pursuit of the Holy Grail at the Pope's behest. He acknowledged that his guilt was evident from the shackles he wore. Landry was right, and the consequence of accusing the judge in this court was self-evident. His actions were considered an insult to the sanctity of the temple. He accused the Pope of being the true culprit, revealing that the Pope had killed Godfrey. The Pope admitted to the killing, shocking the court. He claimed that Godfrey was a traitor who had revealed the location of a secret tunnel to the enemy, leading to the fall of Acre and the loss of the Templars' last stronghold in the Holy Land. The Grand Commander asked Landry if it was true. Landry was speechless. He only said that Acre could not be defended under such circumstances. Facing the Pope's compelling argument, Landry appealed to the Templars, swearing that everything he did was to protect the Holy Grail. At that moment, the Pope called his witness, Gawain. Gawain tells Landry all in public about exchanging Tancred for information about the Holy Grail and about conceiving a child with a married woman. Landry regretted confiding in Gawain, never expecting his betrayal. The Grand Master pronounced the Knight Commander Landry of Paris guilty of many of the 9 deadly sins. Landry was excommunicated and sentenced to death by burning, his soul condemned to eternal damnation. Meanwhile, a soldier noticed a Templar embracing a guard. As the guard approached, Tancred attacked. The Pope is preparing Landry for his punishment as Landry looks around at the people holding candles. The people around him drop the candles on the floor. The Pope was preparing Landry's punishment when he was informed of an urgent matter. He paused the ceremony and met with Landry's mother in a private room. The Pope knows she's here to plead for Landry, but with the Holy Grail in his hands at this point, there's no reason he can't burn Landry. However, Landry's mother was confident that the Pope would change his mind after hearing what she had to say. Tancred rolls up to the Pope's door and is confronted by 2 guards, whom he quickly disposes of. Suddenly, a female assassin hired by de Molay appeared, and the two engaged in combat. The female assassin discovers that Tancred is connected to the Brotherhood of Light, and apparently this woman seems to have some connection to the Brotherhood of Light as well. Tancred is no match for the female assassin and is quickly knocked out by her opponent. The female assassin grabs the chalice and escapes through the window. The crowd didn't know what Landry's mother had said to the Pope, and the Pope gave up on executing Landry at the stake, even removing the penalty of excommunication. The Pope's decision bewildered everyone, including Landry. The Pope personally apologized to Landry, but their conversation was interrupted by a guard reporting the theft of the Holy Grail. Everyone is so busy searching for the Holy Grail that they completely forget that Landry is still locked up in the Great Hall. Taking this opportunity, Gawain came to the hall with a sledgehammer, and he wanted Landry to feel his pain. He swung the sledgehammer at Landry's knees and then turned away, leaving Landry to wail in agony. After discovering Landry, the members of the knighthood took him to the chief physician for treatment. Fortunately, his injuries were not severe, and he only needed to have the bruises on his leg cleared.
This will hurt.
The next day, Landry, who was lying in bed, received a visitor, who was the Pope. The Pope informed Landry that he had rescinded the order against him and wished for Landry's leg to heal quickly. This was because de Molay had regained King Philip's favor and was assembling a powerful army to confront the papacy. Before the king announced that he had obtained the Holy Grail, the Pope wanted Landry to lead the Paris branch of the Knights to retrieve it. Meanwhile, in the French royal palace, Joan returned to France after quelling the rebellion. King Philip approached Joan privately, offering to forgive her past transgressions if she reconciled with him. However, Queen Joan only wanted to be with Landry, which King Philip found humiliating. Upon learning that Landry and the knights were on their way back to Paris, King Philip ordered de Molay to ambush and assassinate Landry outside the city. However, Joan overheard this plan and begged King Philip to spare Landry. Her plea only enraged King Philip further, intensifying his hatred for Landry. King Philip declared that he would show Landry no mercy. As he turned to leave, Joan picked up a candlestick from the table and knocked King Philip unconscious. She then took the Holy Grail and left. In the forest outside Paris, she found Landry and revealed King Philip's plan. At this moment, a horse rushed over from a distance, and the 2 riders on the horse were already dead. Apparently they were shot by the enemy on the way back to report the news. Realizing the enemy was close, Landry ordered his men to take Joan to safety. Before leaving, Joan secretly told Landry that she had the Holy Grail. Landry instructed her to hide it carefully and not tell anyone. The Templars had also formed a defensive line, ready for the impending battle.
Have no fear. They fight for money. We fight for the glory of God. And we win by the grace of God!
In the forest of Versailles, a group of soldiers clad in red cloaks emerged from the woods. They called themselves the Red Knights, mercenaries hired by King Philip of France. Their sole purpose was to annihilate the Knights Templar and eliminate Landry. In terms of numbers, the Red Knights outnumbered the Knights Templars several times over. The Red Knights were led by Gawain, while the Templars were led by the limping Landry. The battle began, with Landry charging at the forefront. Despite being outnumbered, the Knights Templar did not retreat. Soon, the shields of the Templars clashed with those of the enemy. The Templars fought with great coordination, skillfully taking down Red Knights one after another, and the battle reached a stalemate. In the midst of the fight, Gawain noticed Tancred and was puzzled, as he had not expected Tancred to be alive. Gawain, now the commander of the Red Knights, held power and influence. The shield wall broke, and both sides engaged in close combat. Despite his limp, Landry fought fiercely, taking down 4 enemies in quick succession. However, some of the Templars began to tire, their weapons slipping from their hands, leaving them with only their shields. Facing the overwhelming number of Red Knights, they felt despair, as if the enemy was endless. As one knight was about to fall, Landry rushed to his aid and encouraged him.
They have the numbers, but we have God on our side. Now let's fight!
The Red Knight has a tall warrior on his side. His weapon is a hammer, which he swings with great power. Landry focused his gaze on Gawain, who was just a few meters away, the man who had once betrayed him. Landry charged straight at Gawain, with no soldier able to stop him. Landry swung his sword at Gawain, who defended with his shield. Gawain seemed content to defend, even taking a punch without retaliating. Landry's fury blinded him to Gawain's strategy of luring him into a trap. Surrounded, Landry found himself far from the center of the battlefield. The enemy's shields were unusually large, and Landry couldn't break through. He was forced to move with the shield wall and was led into the woods. In his rage, Landry was struck in the leg by a spearman, though he managed to take down a few more soldiers. He couldn't break through the shield wall. Exhausted and injured, Landry crouched on the ground, enduring the pain and frustration. At that moment, King Philip, draped in a blue cloak, appeared. He knew of Landry's affair with the Queen and was enraged that Queen Joan had knocked him out to steal the Holy Grail. King Philip decided to deal with Landry personally in the woods. Landry, who had been King Philip's swordsmanship teacher, was now seen as a traitor who had used his position to have an affair with the Queen. Landry's explanations fell on deaf ears, as his relationship with the Queen was undeniable. The two engaged in a sword fight, but Landry, injured and exhausted, was quickly overpowered. King Philip revealed that he knew Joan was nearby. Landry begged for the king to spare the Queen, but King Philip, feeling betrayed, had no intention of showing mercy. In a fit of rage, Landry pushed King Philip aside, only to be struck down by a soldier's shield. Meanwhile, Queen Joan's water had broken, and Draper was preparing to deliver her baby. Despite her condition, Joan was worried about Landry. Draper tried to reassure her, but a soldier informed her that Landry was surrounded in the forest. Before he could finish, the soldier was killed by an enemy. Disregarding her condition, Joan rushed towards the forest to save Landry. On the battlefield, Tancred faced Gawain, calling him a traitor, but he was no match for Gawain's skill. Gawain had always wanted to use the Holy Grail to heal his legs, but King Philip let the royal physician heal his legs. Now at his peak, Gawain easily overpowered Tancred. Landry's fight with King Philip turned into a brutal brawl. Landry managed to land a few punches, but King Philip quickly gained the upper hand. Landry collapsed, too weak to stand. As King Philip's fists rained down on him, Landry's mind drifted to his memories with Joan.
You're the only woman I've ever loved.
At this moment, Joan appeared. At this moment, she was not the queen, but just an ordinary woman who was worried about her lover. She begged King Philip to spare Landry, even offering her own life in exchange. But King Philip was unmoved, determined to make Joan watch Landry die. On the battlefield, Tancred was defeated, but the Grand Master arrived with reinforcements. Tancred broke free from Gawain, and the Red Knights were forced to retreat. Tancred and two other knights surrounded and killed the formidable Red Knight warrior. Under Joan's constant pleading, King Philip turned his attention to Joan. Joan said that she and Landry could leave France forever, and if King Philip really loved her, he should spare Landry. Enraged, King Philip agreed to spare Landry but demanded Joan's life in return. If he couldn't have her, neither could Landry.
No, Joan, no!
If that's what you want, I'll spare his life and take yours instead.
A soldier informed King Philip that the Templars' reinforcements had arrived and the Red Knights had been defeated. King Philip left the pain to Landry and left with his soldiers. Landry cradled the dying Joan, overwhelmed with grief. Her internal injuries were severe, and Draper could do nothing to save her. Landry begged Joan to stay awake and talk to him. Joan spoke of her dreams for the future, returning to Navarre and living happily with their family. Landry admitted his mistakes, realizing he had been too focused on finding the Holy Grail. Suddenly, he remembered that the Holy Grail could bring the dead back to life, and the Holy Grail was in Joan's possession. Remembering the legend of the Holy Grail's healing powers, Landry had Draper fetch some water and pour it into the Grail. They hoped for a miracle, and Joan claimed to feel better after drinking.
Do you see the blue, my darling?
Joan?
And the horses, they have a foal. Can you see the foal?
I can see.
Will you bring our child to meet with the foal? It's beautiful.
However, their hopes were dashed as Joan slipped into unconsciousness and eventually passed away. In a fit of rage, Landry smashed the Holy Grail. The object they had all sought was now shattered. Heartbroken, Landry imagined a happy family of 3 and put his hand on Joan's belly. Suddenly, he felt the fetus move. The Holy Grail failed to save Joan, but it saved her child. Draper looked at everything in front of him in disbelief, as if this was impossible. So, Draper heard that there was a way to save the baby in Syria, and asked Landry if he was willing to try it. Landry agreed without hesitation. In fact, this is the modern cesarean section. The baby was delivered safely, a girl. Landry held his daughter, a glimmer of joy amidst his sorrow. Tancred and the Grand Master presided over the funeral for Joan and the fallen Templars. Landry, holding his newborn daughter, stated his guilt at the funeral and then expressed his love for the Queen of France, the Queen of Navarre, and Joan. Until he had finished speaking, Tancred sang a hymn, and in the midst of the song, Joan was slowly buried. During the funeral, a Templar approached a carriage and opened a box containing the shattered Holy Grail. He pried open the base of the Grail with a small knife and retrieved a tiny scroll, which he then swallowed. As Landry prepared to leave, he noticed a red flower blooming in the winter cold, a flower common in Navarre. He envisioned the scene Joan had described, a cozy cottage in Navarre surrounded by red flowers and grazing horses, a happy family of 3.